Today's geopolitical perspective focuses on Trump's maritime era and the Flying Dutchman, and understanding Napoleon's conquest of Egypt. Hi, I'm Martin from Cataclysmic Science. So lately, if you followed the news, you would have noticed the conversation about buying Greenland and controlling Panama, Panama's 51st state, and the Gulf of America. These on the screen here is just a couple of thumbnails that I borrowed from some YouTube channels that I followed, like Steve Turley and Bill Whittle. Just borrowing those thumbnails from them. Thanks, guys. To start off this conversation, quickly two critical questions. What caused Europe's dark ages, and why did Napoleon conquer Egypt? So on the first question, anyone that really studied this in depth will know that the fall of Rome didn't fully cause Europe's dark ages. It was the maritime commerce and Mediterranean logistics network that collapsed due to the Middle East power that arose after 600 AD. Two worldviews that couldn't coexist, and that is what led to the Dark Ages. The Phoenician maritime empire slowly rose back up and helped kickstart the wheel of Western civilization. And then on the Napoleon question, to understand this, we must jump further back in history. We have to go to Captain John Hawkins and his young cousin Captain Drake. So Hawkins and Drake realized that to destroy the might of the Spanish king, they had to cut his ability to dominate continental trade and money supply, and that could only be achieved by cutting Spain off from its supply lines of gold. Today we would just freeze someone's bank account, but back then you had to sail out to the trading post and basically sink their ships. These maritime strategies can be very complicated. That's why I just for fun added that 3D chess game of Spock and Star Trek mentioning Captain Picard and James Kirk. Just because I can. Now onwards, in the exact same reasoning, Napoleon probably reasoned that he should cut the British maritime empire from its colonies in India. However, his naval power were inferior to those of Britain. Thus, he decided going the long way, and instead of hopping over the English Channel, he rushed to Egypt as a halfway base, and from there planning to go cut the British-India connection and bring the mighty British maritime power to its knees. This would also cause an immediate cease of any support to British allies on the European continent, making it easier for Napoleon to become master of the continent, although we know in the end that this campaign did fail. Building a maritime empire is a tedious task, as Russia's Peter the Great must have realized in the 1700s. Peter's campaign was led against the Ottoman Empire, having to gain control of the Black Sea, so that from there he could initiate his maritime empire into the Mediterranean Sea. And this brings us back to our main topic. The world as we know it today is shaping into new maritime regions, allies and enemies. We can just look at the Chinese South Sea Islands and the Taiwan issues. We also see a similar Napoleon strategy. Well, not exactly the same, but nonetheless. Also, just to mention, the Suez Canal didn't exist in Napoleon's day. But today, for Russia to race again the dreams of Tsar Peter the Great, Russia seems to follow the strategy of building a main maritime base, which is in Crimea, and also constructing harbors north and south of the Suez Canal so that they can control trade coming in and out of the Mediterranean, connecting via that main shipping route via the Suez Canal. Russia's involvement in Syria, and maybe they might move their bases to Lebanon, I'm not sure what's going to happen in the future, but in Syria and Sudan seems to be very strategic so as to control the Egyptian Suez Canal. It seems like many countries for the last 10 to 15 years were making major changes to their maritime strategies and expanding or securing their positions, which were needed for regional and global maritime national security. The United States of America seem to have awakened and also start re-securing and re-establishing their dominance of maritime and naval areas of strategic importance. No wonder in recent weeks, the newslines read of Panama Canal to be reclaimed or Canada's 51st state and ideas of buying Greenland. I know I myself often look at a map of the world wrongly in a two-dimensional plane, but when looking at the globe from the Arctic, then one realizes how close the USA and Russia are located to each other. I stand corrected, but I believe that the Russians control the Arctic Ocean with their submarine fleet, as well as having a strong presence with commercial maritime vessels in that region. I can see the natural need for strategical responses that rely on naval as well as maritime securities in those Arctic regions. But there are other regions that may also influence the course of these global powers. The Flying Dutchman is a 17th century legendary ghost ship who allegedly never were able to make it to port and doomed to sail the sea forever. This vessel was supposed to sail around southern Africa, or as we know it, the Cape of Storms, and also the Cape of Good Hope. Legend has it that the Flying Dutchman were often recorded in those South African waters. I can't help but think of the movie Pirates of the Caribbean, where we have a standoff between two big forces, and then the Flying Dutchman rises up from beneath the waves. Suddenly, having another variable to take into consideration, although small, can have a big influence depending on which way it steers through the wind. This is from marine traffic, showing tankers and cargo vessels on this current day of 14 January 2025. So, will the location of the Flying Dutchman be the one to determine the balance of power in this modern era of maritime shipping routes? It divides east from west. It seems to be the only open sea route still uncontested for. Thank you for watching.